Hey everyone, and welcome to this QuickBooks Online tutorial. My name's Pritesh, and I'll be guiding you through this session. This is going to be a high-level session on QuickBooks Online, so the purpose here is to get you up and running at a very basic level. If you're looking for more detail or you're looking to cover advanced topics, I've actually created a 6.5-hour course where I go through QuickBooks Online from the very beginning and we cover every aspect in detail. I've added a link to that course in the description below. For this particular tutorial, once again, it's going to be high level. We're still technically starting from the beginning, but I'm going to assume that you've already got a QuickBooks Online account. So with that, let's go ahead and kick things off. We're going to start by navigating through the system and updating some basic company settings. So let's maybe start off with how to navigate through the system and how to update some of your basic company settings. So let's maybe start left to right here. So on the left-hand side here, you'll see that there's this navigation bar. This is really just how to navigate to various sections in the system. So if I wanted to see anything related to sales, I can click on sales and I could review invoice information, modify customer information, products and services. If I click into the expenses tab, I could review my expense transactions. I can incur an expense here. I can also review and edit any vendor related information. Another button here in the navigation bar is this new button. So if you want to come into the system and just quickly, create an invoice or incur an expense or pay a bill, this is your way of carrying out an individual task very quickly. So if I click on the invoice option, it'll bring up the invoice screen for me to enter an invoice details. If I click on the expense option here, then it'll bring up a screen for me to incur expenses. We'll talk about each one of these when we get to those particular sections. Let's head back here to the dashboard view. So this dashboard view here is just exactly that. It's just showing any of your data in the system through these various cards. So you may or may not have data here in the system. So if you don't, you're going to probably see zero balances across the board. But what it's eventually going to show once you get data in here is invoice information, so dollar amounts paid versus unpaid, your expense information, profit and loss, sales information, any bank accounts that you've connected to the system as well. And you can use these little filters here as well. So if you want to see information over the last 30 days, the last quarter, the last 12 months, you can use these filters accordingly. A few of the things that I'll point out here is this menu icon here. So if you click on it, it's just going to give you a little bit more real estate to work on the page. And if you click on it again, the navigation bar appears. This privacy toggle, so if you toggle it on, it'll hide your dashboard and data information. If you toggle it off, then it'll reappear just for privacy purposes. This search functionality here. So again, once you get transactions in the system and you have customers and vendors, you'll be able to search for individual items. So for example, if I type in Kelly, then I'm going to see all of the transactions related to Kelly. And, I can see here the customer information related to Kelly as well. So if I click into any one of these items, it's just going to bring up more details related to my actual search term. So let's close out of here. This notifications icon here, this is just going to give you any sort of notifications from QuickBooks Online. Next thing we want to do is look at some basic settings. So let's click on this settings icon and click on account and settings. And this is where you can come to update some of your basic company information. So here on the company tab, what you can do is you can click into here, update your company logo, your company name. If your legal name is different than the company name, you could select this option and type in your legal name. You can enter your EIN and SSN number. Depending on the type of company you are for tax purposes, you can select the appropriate form and also enter your industry if you'd like. And then you can edit any sort of company contact information, your company email, phone number, website, company address. If you want the company address looking different on your various sales forms, like your invoices, you can make those updates here. Next tab here, billing and subscription. This is going to show you the plan that you're currently subscribed to. So I'm currently subscribed to the QuickBooks Plus plan. I can upgrade and downgrade my plan at any time, and I can also cancel my plan if needed. And then it's also showing any other services that I'm subscribed to. So in this case, I'm subscribed to QuickBooks Time Elite to do some advanced time tracking, and I can obviously cancel and upgrade and downgrade at any time. And if you can also use this tab here to subscribe to additional services. So if you wanted to subscribe to online payroll, you can click on Learn More and add that in as an add-on. The next tab here, usage. So based on your plan, this is just showing you your usage limits, basically. So I get 5 billable users with my plan. I've used 4 so far. In terms of the chart of accounts, I've set up, I have access to creating up to 250 custom accounts. I've only created 11. If you don't know what the chart of accounts are, don't worry. We'll talk about that more when we get there. Classes and locations. So I've used 0 of 40, and really that's just a way of segmenting and and categorizing essentially your business. Tag group. So this is just a way of grouping and classifying your transactions. I've used 0 of these as well. So that's all I wanted to cover in this section, just sort of a quick basic overview, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, so next let's talk about some of the advanced account settings. You'll notice that I skipped over sales, expenses, and payments. We'll talk about those when we actually get to those sections, but let's maybe talk about some of the advanced settings for now. So here under the accounting section, if we click into here, first thing it's asking for is the first month of the fiscal year. So depending on what your financial reporting year end is here, you can just select the first month. So for example, if you have a financial reporting year that goes from January to December 31st, so typically a calendar year end, then your first month of the fiscal year would be January. If your financial reporting year is from April 1st to March 31st, then the first month would of course be April. Next is asking for the income tax, first month of the income tax year. I'm going to keep that the same as the fiscal year. Accounting method. So it's asking whether you use an accrual or a cash basis of accounting. Really simply, when you generate an invoice, let's say to a customer, or you bill a customer, are you recording that income right away? Or are you only recording that income once you receive the cash? If it's the former, then it's the accrual method of accounting. If it's the latter, then it's a cash basis of accounting. Next thing it's asking for is closing the books. Do you want to set specific dates around closing the books, for a particular month, or let's say for a particular quarter? You can enter that date in here, and you can set specific rules here as well. So if you want to modify a transaction after the fact, after your books are closed, there's a couple of settings that you can enable here. I'm going to leave that off for the time being. So once you're done there, just go ahead and click save. Company type, we talked about that in the last section, but depending on the type of company you are, just select the appropriate tax form. So I'm good there. Chart of accounts, we will talk about this when we get to the chart of accounts section. Categories, so classes and locations. If you're never unsure what any of these options are, just go ahead and click on the help text here. So a class really refers to how you segment out your business by department, for example, or by product line. So for example, if you want to segment it out by physical products versus digital products, you probably want to enable classes. Locations. So if you want to segment out your transactions by various locations, physical locations like stores or regions, you want to enable locations. And you can change the location later. You don't have to call it location. You can call it business, department, division, whatever you'd like. So I'll go ahead and keep both of those on and click save. Automation. So do you want to be able to pre-fill forms with previously entered content? I'm going to leave that toggled on versus having to manually enter information each and every time. Automatically applying credits. So we haven't talked about credits yet, but essentially when you generate an invoice, or let's say you have a credit on file for a customer, do you want QuickBooks Online to automatically apply that credit to a future invoice that you generate? Or do you want to pick and choose which invoices those credits get applied to? So I'm going to leave that toggled on for now. I do want it to auto apply. Automatically invoice for unbilled activity. So from a time tracking standpoint, if you have time that you're tracking in the system, your employees are tracking time, do you want that to auto generate an invoice and bill the customer? Or do you want to pick and choose what you actually bill to the customer? I'm going to leave that toggled off because I want to pick and choose. I might not bill all unbilled activity to a customer. Automatically apply bill payments. So what this is going to do is when you make a payment, do you want it to apply to the oldest outstanding bill, or do you want to pick and choose the bill that you're applying it to? I'm going to leave this toggled on as well. So let's go ahead and click save there. Projects and time tracking, we'll talk about those when we get to those sections. Currency, so depending on the currency that you're working with, your home currency, you can just select the appropriate one. Multi-currency, if you do toggle this on, just remember that you can't turn it off after the fact, but you can definitely leverage multi-currency if that applies to your business. So I'm good there. And then other preferences here. So just, date, time format, number format. How do you label your customers? Do you call them clients? Do you call them customers or something else? You can definitely specify accordingly. And then there's a couple of other settings here, like, if, warnings for duplicate checks, or warning you when you enter a bill if that number is already taken, signing you out for inactivity. So if you're inactive for, an hour, it'll sign you out of the system. You can change that accordingly. All right, so that's all I wanted to cover here, and I'll see you in the next section. Next, I want to cover how to set up new customers, how to set up new products and services, and how to add users in the system. But before we do that, I just want to talk about some tax-related settings, because tax settings or tax information does show up in various places in the system. So I just want to address it now. So if you are adding sales tax to your invoices, for example, or applying it to your customers, you want to head over here to your to the taxes tab, and you want to click on set up sales tax. Once you do that, it's going to ask you for the state or the country that your business operates in, so that it can calculate the sales tax accordingly. I've already entered all of that information, so you can see here I've entered Pennsylvania, so this is all set up for me already. But go ahead and enter that information, and you'll be brought here to this screen. Next, just go ahead and hit the sales tax settings link here, and you'll see the tax agency that you set up. So if you click edit here, you can change the filing frequency if you needed to, or even the start date, or you can even make this inactive if needed, but I'm going to keep that as is. You can also add additional agencies as needed. So you can see from this drop down, you'll have a list of other agencies, the filing frequency, and start date as well. You can also add custom rates to forms. So if you wanted to add a special or custom rate, you could do that. You can enter the name of that rate or whatever you want to call it, select the agency, and then enter that actual rate percentage here in the system. If you want to turn off sales tax at any time, you can just click on turn off sales tax, and then it won't appear as an option on your forms. So I just wanted to cover that before we get into creating products, services, customers, and so on and so forth. So let's actually next go in and create new customers in the system. So just head over here to sales and then click on customers. And then you're going to see a full list of all of your customers in the system. So their name, email address, the customer type. This is just a way of grouping your customers. And I've grouped some customers by key accounts, local accounts, national accounts, for example. In order to modify this, or you want to add additional customer types, just click on the customer types option in the top right-hand corner, and you can add additional customer types if needed, or you can edit any of the existing ones. This is just a way of grouping and classifying your customers accordingly. If they have any open balances with you, that'll show up here in this column. And then any action that you can take on your customer's account. So if you want to create an invoice for a customer, an estimate, create a statement, make them inactive, you can do that here. So in order to actually set up a new customer, there's two options. You can click on this new customer button, or if you hit this drop down, you can import customers. So if your customers are sitting in an Excel file somewhere, for example, you can just copy and paste them onto the format provided here in QuickBooks Online. I'm not going to cover that in this particular tutorial, but I do cover that in my in-depth course, and the link to that is in the description below. Instead, we're just going to create a new customer manually here. So just go ahead and click on new customer. First name, I'm just going to type in Daryl, and last name P. Company, I'm just going to call it Daryl's company. And you don't have to enter a company name. You can bill directly to an individual, but I'm going to keep a company name for Daryl. It's asking next of how you want to display Daryl's information. I'm going to keep that as the default. Then you can go in and update other information like email address, contact information, phone number, website. You can specify whether Daryl's company is a sub-customer. So if they're a sub-customer of a parent entity, you can select that parent entity. You can also do cool things like billing directly with the parent, or bill with this customer individually. I'm not going to be using hierarchies or sub-customers, so I'm going to uncheck this for now. You can add additional information like billing address, shipping address, any notes on for Daryl's company, tax-related information. So this is just going to be based on the location that we entered in the previous screen, or if the customer is tax exempt, you can just check this box here and enter a little bit more information. Payment and billing, a couple of things here. So the payment method, so you can select the preferred payment method for Daryl, or you can add a new one if you'd like. Terms, for example, if you want, when we generate an invoice and send it out to Daryl, do we want it to be paid right away on receipt, or do we want to give Daryl up to 15 days, up to 30 days, or up to 60 days to make a payment? Or you can add new payment terms as needed. This is just the preferred or default payment terms for Daryl's company. Daryl's company has an opening balance with us. We can enter it here, and then we can specify the date of. So this is just an outstanding balance that Daryl's company still owes us, but I'm going to leave that blank. You can update language settings here. Add attachments. So if there's any contracts or signed documents, you can attach them here. Custom fields, which I don't think I've enabled at the moment, would show up here. And additional info, customer type. So this is where I can sort of categorize Daryl into one of these categories, or Daryl's company into one of these categories. You can either leave this blank or you can select one of these options. I'll just say it's a national account, for example, and I'll click save. Once you do that, you will see you'll be brought here to Daryl's customer page or Daryl's company's customer page. And what you can do here is you can click edit if you wanted to edit any of that company information. You could see any of the transactions related to Daryl's company. So there's nothing in here right now. Any projects tied to Daryl's company, and any other information here on Daryl's company. If I head back to customers here, if I actually go through an example of a customer that I have information on. So for example, Pam, if I click on Pam's account and I click on transactions list, you'll see here some transactions related to Pam Beasley's store. So let's head back to customers. That's all I wanted to cover there on the customer side. Let's next actually create new products and services. So if we head over here to the products and services tab, you'll see here's a list of various products and services that I've already created in the system. You can use this search functionality to search for specific products. If you wanted to, for example, if you have a Shopify store and you want to link your products over from your Shopify store into QuickBooks Online, I cover that in detail in my full course below. But in this particular tutorial, I'm just going to be creating a product individually on the fly. So a couple of other things that I'll just point out here. So you're seeing the product information, the type of product that it is, so whether it's an inventory item, non-inventory item, or a service. There's a description box, the sales price of that item, the cost related to that item, whether it's taxable or not. If it's an inventory related item, then the quantity on hand. So you can see here for these refrigerators, we do have a quantity on hand and we're tracking them as actual inventory. So you can see that number here. The reorder point, so if it gets to a certain number, then the system will prompt you to reorder this inventory. You can edit any of these inventory items at any time by just clicking on the edit tab, and then, if you click on the edit tab here, this will just allow you to edit any of the information related to that inventory. So in order to set up new products in the system, just go ahead and you can either click on new to add them manually, or you can hit the drop down and click import. And that'll, again, similarly to the customers, you could do a mass data import for those products. Go ahead and click on new. There's a few different options. So inventory items, if you're tracking the inventory for those, non-inventory, service, and then you can even bundle these products and services together. If we click on inventory, for example, you can enter the name, the SKU information if there is any. You can categorize these products, add new categories if needed. Classes, if you wanted to segment out this product, you could add new classes. You can enter the quantity on hand as of specific date and the reorder point again. So if it'll notify you if it gets to that point. And then it's asking for the inventory asset account. So we haven't talked about chart of accounts yet, but essentially what this is saying is, because these inventory items are asset accounts, which account do you want it actually being represented in? So I'm just going to leave it here in the inventory asset account. If you wanted to add a new one, you totally can, but we'll look at that when we get to the chart of accounts section. You can add in a description of the product or the inventory item, the sales price of that product, and anytime you make a sale of that product, it's asking here for, again, related to the chart of accounts, where do you want to track that income? So you can set up a brand new account for this. So you can say, whether, let's say we were selling pens, we could say sale of pens, and that would go to this specific account, or you can just say to the generic sales account, or in this case, sales of product income. Sales tax category, so you can select the tax category of whether it's taxable or not. And then down below, purchasing information. So when you actually purchase these inventory items, first of all, what's the cost of those items? And then when you do purchase them, which expense account should they appear in? So I'm going to leave this as the standard of cost of goods sold. So when you actually, sell these inventory items, it's going to make an entry into the cost of goods sold account. And then if you have a preferred vendor, you can specify those vendors here, or you can select one of these here, or you can add a new one accordingly. Once you're done that, just go ahead and click Save and Close, and then that inventory or that product related item will appear here. The next thing I want to cover are users in the system. So specifically individual, let's say staff members in the system that you want to add in to maybe generate invoices for you, or bills, or pay bills, for example. In order to do that, just go ahead and click on Settings and then click on Manage Users. And this is where you'll see all of the current users in the system. So you can see there's 4 in total. And if you're not sure about your user limits, once again, if you click on the settings icon here and click on Account and Settings, and if you click on Usage, you'll see how many billable users you have available to you. So I have 5 and I've used 4. What counts as a billable user and what doesn't count as a billable user? Well, if you click on Add User here, there's a couple of different types. So if you're setting up a standard user, so a user that can fully interact with the system, but without admin privileges, they count towards your limit. If it's a company admin, they also count towards your user limit. But if the user is only coming in for reporting purposes or time tracking purposes, they don't count towards your user limit. So if you want to set up a standard user, just go ahead and click on Standard and then Next. And then there's a couple of different access rate options. So if you want to give them full access, again, full access to interact with the system, but not change any administrative stuff, this is everything that they'd have access to. If you only want to provide them with access to everything except for the accounting features, you can select this None option. And then you can even add them in as limited users. So if you only want them accessing the customer and sales related side of things, you can select the customers option. If you want to only allow them to interact with the vendors and purchases side of things, you can select the vendors option. If you want both, you can select both. And you're probably wondering, well, what's the difference between that and then the all selection? And not too much. There's a few subtle differences. So you can see here, for example, by selecting both of these, they still can't add, edit, or delete accounts. Whereas if you click all, they can add, edit, and delete accounts. So there's a few subtle differences here. So I'm going to go ahead and select all and then click Next. And then it's asking for some admin user settings. So do you want this user to add, edit, and remove users? No. Edit company info? No. Manage subscriptions? No. And then I'm going to go ahead and click Next. And then on this next page, it's going to ask for their first name, last name, and email so that you can actually invite them into the system. They'll get an invitation link, and then they can actually log in and interact with the system. I'm not going to cover that end-to-end process in this tutorial. I do cover it in my full course though, so check out the link below if you're interested in seeing what different permission levels look like. All right, so that's all I wanted to cover in this section. I'll see you in the next one. Next thing I want to cover are the advanced sales related settings. So if you head over here to the settings icon and then click on Account and Settings, then go ahead and click on the Sales tab. Let's maybe look at some of our options here. So the first thing is customizing the look and feel of your sales form. So if you click into this button, you'll see here that you can create multiple styles for your various invoices, estimates, sales receipts. Let's take a look at what the default looks like here. So if we click into here, this is what our default invoice design template looks like. You can change up the template, so you can change it to any of these various options. I like the friendly options. I'm going to keep it as that. You can make logo edits, change the colors, change the font, and change the actual dimensions and print layouts if you need to. Here under the content tab, you can click into each individual section and make edits as needed. You can see there's lots of customization here. And then here under emails, this is just allowing you to modify, what that message looks like to those specific customers for the various sales forms that you're actually sending out. And also down at the bottom, the actual reminder email as well and what that text looks like. So you can modify all of these design and text related settings here in this view. I'm going to go ahead and close out of here and exit without saving. I'm going to stick with the default. Let's head back to the settings icon and click back into Account and Settings and click back into Sales. Let's take a look at what else we can modify. So sales form content, preferred invoice terms. So whether that's net 30, net 50, net 60, you can select that here, or you can add additional terms. Again, this just relates to when you need the customer to pay you by. So if it's on receipt, or if you're giving them 15 days, 30 days, or 60 days to pay. Preferred delivery method, whether that's print later, send later, or none. I'm going to keep that as none. Shipping, and if you're unsure what any of these mean, just actually click into the help text here. So this just adds a shipping field to the sales forms, so I'm going to leave that toggled off. Custom fields, so custom transaction numbers. So this becomes useful when, for example, if you integrate to like a Shopify store and your invoices are being auto-generated from your Shopify store, it can auto-generate invoice numbers using a custom numbering system. I'm going to keep that toggled on, but you don't have to. Service date. So if you click into here, you can add a service date field to your invoices. Discounts, deposits. If you want these things on your invoices, you want to toggle these on. Tips, if those are a part of your business, you want to toggle these on. And then tags, if you want to use those to actually categorize your transactions, you can keep those on. I'm going to click save there. Products and services. So show product service column on sales forms. I'm going to keep that toggled on. Do you want to show the product SKU? Yes or no, I'm going to keep that toggled off. Price rules. So this is just like relating to like if you want to set up promotions for your products and services and give price discounts and special offers to specific customers, you can toggle this on and set up specific price rules. Tracking quantity and price / rate, I'm going to keep that on. And then tracking inventory on hand. I do want to know the inventory remaining, so I'm going to keep that toggled on. Late fees, if you charge late fees for your customers, you can toggle this on. I'm going to leave that off. Progress invoicing. So if you if it's a part of a project and there's multiple invoices for a specific deal, then you can toggle this on and invoice on a progression basis. Messages, so this is just asking you if you want to change the text of the email, the default email that goes out to customers, and you can specify by sales form type as well here. Reminders as well. Right here. So if you want to add in additional reminders, you can toggle this on and you can send out reminders, like for example, 3 days before the due date of an invoice, on the due date 3 days after, and you can make some modifications here as needed. So you can even change it from 3 to whatever number that you'd like to change this to. Online delivery, I missed messages. Oh no, I did cover messages. Online delivery, so email options for all sales forms. So how you want that to appear. Do you want just a short summary in the email, or do you want the full details in the email along with a PDF attached? I have this as the default selection, so I'm good for that. And then statements. So if you want to send out statements to your customers, do you want to list each transaction as a single line item, or list each transaction including all line details? So I'm going to list them all as a single line item. And you also have the option of showing the aging table at the bottom of the statement. So if they owe you some money and it's overdue by 30 days or 60 days or 90 days, it'll show that aging information at the bottom. All right, so that's all I wanted to cover here in the advanced sales settings. All right, so before we start creating transactions in the system like invoices and bill payments and things like that, I just want to touch on the chart of accounts and the financial statements at a very high level. So in order to access the chart of accounts, just head over here to accounting and then click on chart of accounts. And you'll notice that this is a full list of all of the chart of accounts in the system. And QuickBooks Online does a really good job of providing you with some good a chart of accounts as a starting point. So in theory, you probably don't even need to modify any of these if your business is pretty simple. But just think about any transaction that you record in the system is recorded in the chart of accounts, and then your chart of accounts actually roll up into your financial statements. So let's actually maybe start there. So if we head over here to reports, and we click on, for example, the balance sheet. So you're probably familiar with the balance sheet, but really at a high level, this is just everything that you own, so your assets, and everything that you owe, your liabilities, at a specific point in time. So in this case, as of May 10th. And the balance sheet is important for a variety of reasons. You might have you might be going for a loan and your bank needs to see your balance sheet to look at your assets and liabilities. Someone might be investing in your business, and there might just be other reasons why external stakeholders or even internal stakeholders might need to review the financial statements, and more specifically the balance sheet, to get an understanding of your assets and your liabilities. But these individual line items here, like checking, accounts receivable, inventory, asset, these are just the chart of accounts that we saw on the previous screen, and they roll into here, into the actual financial statements. The other more common financial statement is the profit and loss statement, or otherwise known as the income statement. And this is just looking at your revenues or your income and your expenses over the course of a given year. Typically, it's over the course of a given year. In this scenario, a year hasn't passed yet, so we're just looking at January 1st to May 10th. But as soon as we hit December 31st, you'll see a full and complete profit and loss statement here in the system. And again, these individual line items are just the individual chart of accounts. And you can see I've created a couple of custom ones. So sales of coffee mugs, sales of farm tours. I've created these as separate custom chart of accounts. So you can do the same if you'd like, or you can just have everything flow through the standard sales account if required. But that's in a nutshell, really, when you think about transactions being recorded in the chart of accounts and then flowing over to the financial statements, that's exactly, what it is at a high level. So if we head back here to accounting and then chart of accounts, what you can do if you needed to, you could add additional chart of accounts. You can edit any of the existing ones. My recommendation is to go through and just double check. Like, you can probably leverage what's already there and maybe just rename some of these accounts if required. And so, and if you're not sure, which accounts belong to which statement, for example, the best way to do it is you can see here under type, everything from the first row here right down to equity. These are all of your balance sheet related chart of accounts. So your assets and everything that you own, followed by your liabilities, everything that you owe, and then your equity. And then starting here from the income line all the way down to the very bottom, the last expense account, this is just your income and expenses, and these accounts flow over to the income statement. Now, the nice part is when you enter a transaction into QuickBooks Online, like you generate an invoice or you pay a bill, QuickBooks Online automatically tracks the transaction and enters the appropriate debit and credit accordingly. So you don't have to manually do that. The only real time you need to manually enter it is if you're going to manually enter a journal entry yourself, but we're not going to be doing that here in this video. If you want to edit any of these accounts, just hit the drop down here on the right-hand side, click edit. And this is where you can make any modifications. So the first selection asks about the account type. So in this case, it's a bank account, specifically an asset account on the balance sheet. Then it asks for a detail type in a lot of cases. So in this case, it's a checking account. You can give it a name if you'd like. I just kept it as checking, and you can add a little bit more information here if you'd like. If it's a sub account and there's a parent-child relationship, you can select this option and select the appropriate parent account if that did apply. If you want more information into any of these accounts, like let's say you just wanted to see all of the transactions related to any of these accounts, what you could do is you could click on, for the balance sheet accounts, you can click on View Register. For the income statement or profit and loss accounts, you can just click on Run Report. And then this is going to show you all of the transactions that have been recorded in the system for that specific account. Once again, it's nice. It does it automatically for you, but this is just your way of seeing a more detailed list of those transactions for that specific chart of account. So I want to keep this really high level on the chart of account side. This is how to sort of go in and modify and edit this. If you wanted to add additional ones, you really need to add additional chart of accounts. You have two options. You can hit this drop down and import these chart of accounts using a templated data import file, or you can just click on New, and then this would bring up the chart of accounts creation screen, and this is where you'd go in and create some chart of accounts. So some additional common ones that you might want to create would probably be like your bank account. Maybe you receive money from like a Square account, let's say, or any sort of like bank or checking account. You might want to set that up in the system. Any specific inventory accounts where you're tracking inventory, you want to track it separately, or long-term asset accounts, for example, you might want to set those up. But again, we're not going to be covering that in too much detail in this particular tutorial. If you want a little bit more details on the chart of accounts, definitely check out my course in the description below. But that's all I wanted to cover here in the chart of accounts section, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is invoicing. So there's a few different invoices that I want to walk through. In the first example, I'll just walk through sort of a general invoice, a basic invoice. Then I'll walk through a discounted invoice. Then I'll show you how to apply sales tax to an invoice as well. And then I'll also walk through what a recurring invoice would look like. So to set up any of these invoices, just go ahead and click on the New button here on the left-hand side, and then click on Invoice. So in the first example, let's just set up or send out a basic invoice. So first things first, let's select a customer we want to send this invoice to. So hit the drop down and either select from the list here or just click add new if you want to add an additional customer. I'm just going to select Kelly in this case, and you can see Kelly's email populates, billing address populates, the net payment terms populate as well. So her default terms are net 30, meaning she has up to 30 days to pay this invoice. If you want to change those payment terms for this invoice, just go ahead and hit the drop down here and select another payment term, or you can click add new to add any custom payment terms if you needed to. The invoice date is just today's date. The due date is 30 days out because we're net 30, so that looks good to me. One area that I glossed over is this online payments piece. So QuickBooks Online does offer your customers the ability to pay directly. There's like a transaction fee and some other things involved. I don't have that set up, but if you're interested in this, then just click Get Set Up to explore this in a little bit more detail. Tags, if you want to categorize your transactions further, you can. If you want to modify the invoice number, you can. If you want to add a location, you can. I'm going to leave all of that as is. And then here under the actual invoice line items, let's go ahead and select maybe a product or service that Kelly's going to purchase. So just go ahead and hit this drop down. You can add new if you want to add additional products or services, or just select from the list that you've already created. In this case, I'm going to say that Kelly's purchasing the world's best boss mug, and maybe she's going to be purchasing 2 of these for a total of $10. If I wanted to add additional messages on the invoice, I could here. If I wanted to attach any files, I could here. And then we'll talk about discounts and sales tax in the next scenarios, but this looks good here to me. So let's go ahead and click Save and Send. And then on the next screen, it's going to just give you a preview of what that message is going to look like that goes out to Kelly. So the email body, who it's coming from, who it's going to, the email subject line, the actual body of the email, and you can modify this text if needed. And then over to the right is the actual email that Kelly's going to receive. So it's just giving you a preview of what that looks like. So you can either hit send and close, or you can hit save and new or send and new, for example, if you wanted to generate a new invoice. But in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and click send and close, and then that will send out that email to Kelly. Let's go ahead and set up another scenario. So in this case, discounted invoices. So let's go ahead and click on new and invoice. And then similarly, let's just hit the drop down here and select different customers. Let's select Jim. And then you can see Jim's information populates. You'll also notice on the right-hand side, this little pop-up appeared saying add to invoice. And it's giving me an estimate here of $100 and a charge of $15. What this is these are just transactions on Jim's account from the past. So there was an estimate that I created for him. There was also a delayed charge, meaning that I'm supposed to charge him an amount in the future, a delayed charge in this case. So it's just asking me, QuickBooks Online is just asking me if I want to add these amounts to this invoice. So you can go ahead and add these in. I'm not going to cover that in this particular tutorial. I do cover that in my full course, but for the time being, I'm just going to go ahead and hide this. And in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and select another product, or a product maybe that Jim is purchasing. Let's just go with the mugs again. And maybe he's purchasing 8 of these for a total of $40. In this case, because he's purchasing so many, I'm going to offer a discount. You have 2 options. You can say discount percent. So you can add a percentage here that gets applied to the invoice, or a discount value, which would be the actual dollar amount of that invoice. So I'm just going to go ahead and select percent and say I'm giving him a 5% discount for a total of $2. That amounts to $2. So the total invoice now is $38. So let's go ahead and you can either hit save and send, or if you hit this drop down, you can hit save and close, and that won't actually send the invoice email to Jim, but it'll be saved in the system. Let's just go ahead and hit save and send and close. All right, so in the third example I want to walk through is having sales tax on invoices. So if we head over here to the taxes section, I actually disabled sales tax just for this scenario, but if you want to enable it, just go ahead and click on set up sales tax and click OK. And we looked at this in a prior video, so you should have all of this set up. And now your sales tax is set up. So now if I head back over here to new and click invoice, now what you'll see is at the bottom here under select tax rate, it's just going to ask you, do you want to base this on your location, or do you want to add a custom rate? And it'll automatically apply the sales tax to this particular invoice. You'll also see here the location of the sale, which is important for calculating the actual sales tax. So that's how you'd get sales tax onto the actual invoice. The next thing I want to look at is recurring invoices. So what we've been looking at right now is just setting up one invoice at a time. Let's say you had a scenario where your customer was purchasing the same thing from you every month, the same product or service, for example. You might want to consider recurring invoices so you don't have to set these up each and every time. And what that does is it'll auto-generate and auto-send an invoice out to your customers at a specific interval. So you can actually specify here, the customer that you're sending this to, or you're setting this up for, the interval. So do you want that to happen monthly? On what day of every month? And when do you want that to start? And when do you want to end by? So you can end by a certain date, or you can end after a certain number of occurrences. And again, this will send out a recurring invoice to your customers. So let's close out of here. And I'm not going to save that. Now that we've created a few invoices, let's head over to the chart of accounts and take a look at the impact here on the chart of accounts side. So if we scroll down and take a look at our sales coffee mugs account and click run report, we should see the transaction. So we can see that there's a couple of transactions in here, one for Kelly, one for Jim, that have gone through the actual sales account. And we did give Jim a discount. So let's actually take a look at what that discount looks like. And actually the best way to do that is if you actually click on reports and you click on profit and loss. And then here under income, under discounts given, if you click into this line item, you'll see any discounts given in the system. So here is the $2 discount that we gave to Jim for the purchase of those coffee mugs. Another place to actually review these transactions, and my preferred way is if you hit sales here and then click on all sales. And then you might have these preset filters, so just go ahead and remove those. You'll see here's a list of all of your sales transactions in the system sorted by date. So up top here, you can see that here's the invoice for Jim, here's the invoice for Kelly. And now what I can do is I can actually receive these payments directly from here. So let's say, Kelly paid or Jim paid. What I can do is I can click receive payment directly from here. And then what I can do is, select the payment method through which, Kelly paid. So let's just say Kelly paid through credit card. I can add a reference number if needed. And I'm going to also indicate which account I want to deposit these funds into. So in this case, my checking account. And then down below, it's showing any of the outstanding transactions. So it's asking me, is this the only invoice that Kelly paid for, or were there any other invoices that Kelly paid for as well? So in this case, it was just this transaction here. So I'll just hit the drop down here and click save and close. And now I've received that payment for that particular invoice. So you can actually see here, payment from Kelly Kapoor of $10. And I can do the same thing here with Jim. And there's a bunch of other options here too. I can print, I can send a reminder. This is one way of doing that. You can also click into the customers tab here and go to the appropriate customer and then receive payment this way as well. But I just prefer doing it the other way. The next thing I want to talk about are estimates. So we looked at invoices so far. But you might have scenarios where your customers require an estimate before they actually purchase goods or services from you. In order to actually set up estimates, just go ahead and click on the new button here on the left-hand side, and then go ahead and click on estimate. And then that should bring up the estimate creation screen here. And similarly to the invoice creation screen, you can just select a customer you want to send the invoice to. So in this case, Aaron. You'll notice that there's this little status here. So it's just asking you what the status of this estimate is. So right now it's pending, but let's say once Aaron accepts, then we can change the status to accepted or closed, or maybe she rejected the estimate, and then we can actually change the state here to rejected. But it's very similar to setting up an actual invoice. You just select the product or service that Aaron wants an estimate for. So let's just go ahead with those coffee mugs again, and let's say 10 coffee mugs, and this would be an estimate. And obviously you can change any of these line items as needed, and then you can click save and send, and that'll send the actual estimate out to Aaron. Now, estimates don't impact the chart of accounts. They would only impact the chart of accounts and the corresponding financial statements once you convert that estimate into an invoice. And in order to do that, and there's a few different ways to do that, if I head back here to all sales, and you can see it's already pre-filtered here for me, but under estimates. But if I just close out of here, I'll still see it here. So here's the estimate for Aaron for $50. If I click create invoice and I convert this to an invoice, only then will it actually impact the chart of accounts, but just the estimate alone will not impact the actual chart of accounts. The last thing I want to cover, if we head over here to new, is credit memos. And you can see there's a bunch of other different transaction types. I do cover all of them in more detail in my course, but just for this particular tutorial, I'm going to keep it pretty high level and just touch on a few areas. But credit memo, so if you needed to issue a credit to a customer for whatever reason, maybe it was a loyal customer, or there were some complaints, or they're returning some items, you could just do that here by clicking on credit memo, select the customer that you want to send the credit memo to. So let's just select Aaron, or let's just select Jim, let's just say in this case, and Jim's information will populate. You can select the product or service that the credit applies to. If it doesn't apply to a specific product or service, you can just select one of these general accounts. You can even add a new general account as well. There's no hard and fast rule to this, but let's just say we're issuing a credit for those mugs. We can just say maybe 2 of them that we're issuing credits for. Click save and send, and click send and close. Now what you'll see is that because so you'll see here under the transactions, the credit for those 2 mugs of $10 was automatically by QuickBooks. That $10 credit was automatically applied to the outstanding invoice that Jim has with us. And the reason that it was automatically applied is, if you remember from an earlier session, we actually here under account and settings, under the advanced settings, we enabled automation so that anytime a credit is generated in the system, it'll automatically apply it to the invoice. And this is taking quite a while to load here, but let's just click on advanced here, and here under automation, you'll see automatically apply credits. This is on, so it will automatically, if there is a credit for a customer, it'll automatically apply to any outstanding invoices in the system. But you can toggle this on and off as needed. So that's the extent of what I wanted to cover in this section, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, so the next thing we want to take a look at is the expenses section. So let's go ahead and head over here to the expenses section. And let's start here in the vendors tab. So any of your vendors would be listed here on the system. So you can see I've already got a number of vendors here in the system. You can create new vendors by just clicking on new vendor here, or you can hit the drop down and click import vendors. If you click on new vendor, you're going to see a very similar screen to what we saw with the customer setup view, with a little less options, but it's just asking you to enter the name and other information related to that specific vendor, and a couple of other things too, like if they're a contractor, tracking payments for 1099 forms, and then also, this is really important, the default expense account. So any expenses that we are incurring from this vendor, where do we actually want to track against it in the chart of accounts? So you can actually specify, you can even create technically a separate custom account per vendor, which I did in a few cases, but you don't have to do that, or you can select a default account for those expenses if needed. Once you're done creating your vendors, you'll see them here in this list below. If we head over here to the expenses tab, this is where you'll see a list of all of the expenses in the system. So very similar to the sales transaction screen, but this is just everything related to the expense side of things. So let's maybe actually create or incur a new expense in the system. In order to do that, and there's a few different ways to do that, you can hit this drop down here and click expense, for example. You can even just click this new button here and click expense here under vendors. And once you do that, you'll see that the expense creation screen appears, and then it's asking for, who did you pay? So you can select the appropriate vendor from this list here. So let's just say, in this case, I don't know, Jan Levinson. So let's select Jan. It's going to ask the payment account. So expenses are things you've already paid for. You've already incurred these expenses. So it's just asking, how did you actually make this payment? So in this case, I used my business credit card. And specifically, how did you pay? So I'll just select credit card in this case, asking for the actual payment date, reference number, location, and some other information like the tag information if you want to add that in. So here under category, if you hit this drop down, you'll see that I've already created a separate and again, you don't have to do this, but just for demonstration purposes, I created a separate line item for all expenses related to Jan here under Jan Consulting Services. But again, you don't have to do that. Maybe it's a meal or a business meal or something, and you can select the appropriate expense account accordingly. You can add in a description here of the actual expense if you'd like, and then the total amounts. Let's just say it was for $200, and then you can also include whether it's billable, taxable. You can also assign it to a specific project that maybe you've set up in the system. We'll be taking a look at that a little later, and then any classes as well that you want to assign this specific category of expense out to. So you can add new classes to segment out your transactions. You can add an additional memo and attachments if you needed to, but this is essentially the way that you would incur an expense in the system. Now, we're obviously doing this one by one. I'm going to show you a little bit later how you can connect your bank account or import transactions in and do this in a more automated way, but this is how you do it sort of one by one. So once you're done here, just go ahead and click Save and Close. And once you do that, you'll see that here's the expense that occurs. That was just incurred, the payee, the category, and the actual total amount. And you can click View and Edit at any time, or hit this drop down, print, copy, delete, or void. If we head over here to the actual chart of accounts, and we scroll down to Jan Consulting Services, and we click Run Report, you'll also see that that transaction appears here for that amount of 200 here on May 10th. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about are purchase orders. So if we head over here to New and Purchase Order, think about purchase orders as just something that essentially is almost like a request, right? Like out to your customers. Requesting certain products or services from them, and so this is just your way of kind of sending out that request to your vendors. I shouldn't say customers; it's your vendors. And I should mention that although I clicked on New and then Purchase Order, just make sure here under Settings. If you click on Account and Settings, that you have purchase orders enabled. So just go ahead and click on Expenses, and here under Purchase Orders, just make sure Use Purchase Orders is on, so that you're able to actually create a purchase order in the system. So let's go ahead and click on Create Purchase Order, and that'll bring up the purchase order screen. It's asking first thing for a vendor, so let's go ahead and select a vendor. So I'll select Bob Vance in this case. And then Bob Vance's information should populate. You can see that there's a status here. So right now the purchase order, or commonly referred to as the PO, is open. Once it's closed and Bob is good with the amount that we're requesting, and he sends us a bill for that amount, we can just go ahead and close the purchase order accordingly. It's asking for shipping information and where it's going to be shipped to. And then down below, it'll specify what you're actually requesting in terms of a purchase. So in this case, actually, we order refrigerators from Bob Vance. So you can see that the product / service that I'm purchasing or requesting to purchase are the refrigerators. You can specify the amount that you're ordering. And actually, if you hover over here, it'll actually show you the quantity that you currently have on hand. So you have 120 on hand, and maybe I'm going to go ahead and order an additional 20, or, you can click in here and change this amount. Maybe I'm just going to order 5 for the time being. And then you can add a bit more information here, click Save and Close. And then once you do that, if we head over here to the expenses section, you'll see here that the purchase order shows up here as a transaction. Now, purchase orders don't impact the chart of accounts. They only impact the chart of accounts once it's actually converted to a bill and you make a payment on that bill. But just simply creating the purchase order on its own doesn't actually have a direct impact into the chart of accounts. At least that request that goes out to your customers, to your vendors. So that's the extent of what I wanted to cover here on the expenses side. Again, it's very high level. If we click New here, there's lots of other different types of transactions here. I do cover these in more detail in my course once again, but that's the extent of what I wanted to cover here in this tutorial. Again, I wanted to just keep it very, very high level, and I'll see you in the next section. All right, so the next thing I want to take a look at is banking and automation. So far we've been taking a look at how to enter expenses manually one by one in the system, but in reality, it's unlikely that you're going to actually be entering expenses one by one in the system, and instead it's likely that you're going to be connecting to your bank accounts like your credit cards and your checking accounts to bring over those transactions automatically. So in order to do that, just go ahead and click on the Transactions tab here and then click on Banking. And once you do that, you'll be brought here to this screen. You can see that I've already linked two accounts here in the system, my business credit card and my checking account. And then down below, you're seeing all the transactions related to those accounts. Now, there's two ways of getting your data into the system. You can either link to your account, your bank accounts directly, or you can upload those transactions in the system using a file import. So in order to actually link your accounts in the system, or link directly to your bank account, just go ahead and click on this link account button here on the right hand side. And if you can't find your bank here from this list, just go ahead and search for your bank here in the search bar. Once you found your bank, just go ahead and click on it, click continue, enter your banking credentials, and then on the next screen, it'll ask which accounts you actually want to sync over. Once you do that, you'll see that your accounts come over like this, and your transactions will appear here at the bottom. Similarly, or let's just say you don't feel comfortable linking directly to your accounts or your bank accounts, then what you can do is actually import that data into the system using a file import. So in order to do that, just go ahead and click on this drop down here on the right-hand side and click Upload from File. And what it's asking for is a file from your bank account. So just go ahead and log into your online banking, and depending on the accounts that you want to bring over, just download that data. It's likely that it'll download into a CSV format, and it'll be one file per one account. So just go ahead and upload those files here in the system. And once you follow those steps, you'll see that your data appears as so. I'm not going to be covering each and every single step here in the system of how to import your data in, but if you'd like to see that, definitely check out my course below where I actually walk through the detailed steps of importing your data into the system using the file import system. So once you've done that, like I said, you'll see all of your transactions down here at the bottom. And now you can actually go through each one and confirm which account it belongs to. So for example, you can see here, there's this Uber charge. So if I click into here, I can, you can see that it's already categorized this expense. It thinks that it belongs here in the Uber expenses account, which is correct. So what I can do is I can just go ahead and click confirm. Or if I wanted to reallocate it to a different account, I could just select the other account that it belongs to. And you can see that there's a bunch of other options here as well. Does this relate to a specific customer or project, specific location? Is it segmented out by a specific class? Do I want to add a tag to categorize this transaction further? Do I want to update the memo, attach any files? So there's lots of different things that you can do here with these transactions. But like I said, you can just go through and then confirm where each of these transactions belong. So this expense looks good to me. I'm going to go ahead and allocate it to the Uber expense account. So I'm going to go ahead and click confirm, and then it'll disappear here from the list. Now, as you can imagine, if you're going to go through each and every single one of these items and then, click confirm and validate which account it can go into, that also does seem quite manual. So the smarter way of working here is to actually set up specific rules so that it auto categorizes these transactions into their respective accounts. So in order to set up rules in the system, just go ahead and click on this rules tab. And let's take a look at some of the rules that I've already set up. So here I've set up an Amazon rule, for example. So if I click edit here, let's take a look at what this looks like. So I've just named this rule Amazon rule, and this applies to any money going out of any of my accounts. And so what I'm saying here is that if the description of that specific transaction contains the word Amazon, then do the following. So in this case, I'm then assigning that transaction to an expense account called, and then here's the category where you can specify the specific expense that it should be going to, and then you can also specify the specific payee. You can also add tags to those transactions as well. And then down at the bottom, it's asking automatically confirm transactions this rule applies to. So what this is saying is when these transactions are loaded in the system or you connect to your bank account, do you want to automatically assign these transactions based on this rule, or if you deselect this, if you uncheck toggle this off, the auto confirm off, what it's then going to do is it's going to require you to then go in and confirm each and every single transaction. Even though there's a rule set up, you're going to have to confirm that, those transactions do belong to that specific account, based on this rule. But currently I have this switched on to auto confirm. So as these transactions come in, it auto applies to that specific account. So in order to actually set up a new rule, you can just go ahead and click on new rule here. And then similarly, you can go ahead and fill out this information. It doesn't just apply to assigning out, transactions to specific accounts, but it also applies to excluding transactions. So let's just say, for example, I had my Netflix monthly charge running through this account. What I could do is I could set up a new rule called Netflix rule, for example, and that applies to money out of all of my accounts, or let's just say it comes out of my checking account specifically. And then it's asking, from a description standpoint, if it contains the word Netflix, then what I wanted to do is just exclude it completely from the system, because that's a personal expense. So then what I can do here, instead of clicking assign, I can hit this drop down and click exclude. And then so any expense with the word Netflix in it will exclude it from the system. And then I can go ahead and click save, and that'll apply to all of my transactions. So if I head back here to banking, you'll see that, there's 3 categories here for review, which are all of your transactions that are here for review. There's also categorize. So these are already categorized. Either you categorize them yourself manually, or those rules categorize these transactions automatically. So you can see here, if the rule auto categorized it, you'll see that this appears in green here saying auto confirm and rule, for example. And then any excluded transactions would appear here on the excluded tab, for example. All right, so that's all I wanted to cover here in terms of banking and transactions, and I'll see you in the next one. So I just want to cover reporting at a very high level. So if we click here into the reports tab, you'll be presented with a number of different reports in the system. We already had a look at the balance sheet and the profit and loss report, but as you can see, there are a number of different other reports that are available to you out of the box. I have the plus plan, so these are the reports that are available to me. As you can see, there's quite a few reports, and this can be overwhelming at first, especially if you're trying to figure out which reports are useful to you or not. My recommendation is to just take a bit of time and click through each one and get a sense of the data that it's showing you. And if you find any of these reports useful, what you can do is you can actually add them to your favorites by clicking on this star icon, and then it'll be added here in your favorite section. You can also search for reports at any time. So if you're trying to search for purchase order reports, you can type in purchase, and then those corresponding reports will appear here in the system. What you can also do is, if you want to get a sense of the description of a report before you click into it, you can just hover over any of these reports, click on the help text here, and then it'll provide you with a description of that report. So let's maybe click into some of these standard reports. So let's just click into the business snapshot. This report, for example, is showing you a graphical view of your income and expenses in pie chart format up top, and then in bar graph format down below. In this case, showing you quarter over quarter income and quarter over quarter expenses. You can also change this to monthly if you'd like. All right, so let's click back here and maybe click into one more report. Let's say the statement of cash flows. So super important report. This is showing you your cash flow activities broken down by operating activities, investing activities, and financing activities. And I should mention, what you can also do and leverage are these filters up top, and you can even further customize these reports if you'd like. So if you click on the customize button here, you can customize these filters, the rows or columns, advanced filters, and you can even add additional header or footer information. Once you've saved these custom reports or a custom report of yours, it'll actually appear here in the custom reports tab. So as you can see, I've already created a couple of custom reports on my end. So if we click into one of these, I'll just show you what this looks like. So here I've just created a profit and loss by key customers report. From here, what I can do is, further customize if I'd like to. I can even email this out if I'd like to. I can print it. I can export to Excel or PDF. And there's just a variety of things, additional things that you can actually do with these reports. If we head back to the reports list, I'm going to click into the management reports here. So really what this is a management style report. And really it's just an accumulation of the standard and the custom reports that we saw on the previous two tabs. So for example, if you hit the drop down here under sales performance and you click edit, what you can do is you can set up a management style report. You can customize this by changing the cover style. You can change the logo if you'd like, add some title or subtitle information. But more importantly, if you click into the reports on the reports page here, you can pick and choose which reports should appear in this management report. So you can add and modify as needed. So if I wanted to add a new report, I can click add new report. And now I see a full list of all of the reports that are available to me. So pretty much all of these are those standard reports, but there's also these two customized reports that I created earlier. So I can actually add them here to my management style report. All right, so there's a lot that you can do here in terms of reporting. I just wanted to cover this at a very, very high level, and yeah, that's the extent of what I wanted to cover from a reporting standpoint. All right, so that just about wraps up this tutorial. I hope you're able to get some value from it. Once again, this was only a high-level overview, and if you're looking for a more comprehensive tutorial, definitely check out the link to my course below. But otherwise, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in future videos.